I'm a girl shooter for the challenge on the gun. Hey, it's your favorite line. Yeah. Brothers, yeah. I'm a love shooter for they try to drop the gun. They know I be who I hit a target on the run. Aiming for the gold, never settle for the brush. I be with that King J, way before LeBron. I'm a love shooter for they try to drop the gun. They know I be who I hit a target on the run. Aiming for the gold, never settle for the bronze. I be with the King J, way before LeBron. Yeah, strange number, that's a missed call. We on top, make a roof, that's a hit dog. K9 on the ground, that's a pitfall. Righteous man eat high, we on street laws. Be a light, I need the highest votes. It's a wave and I'm on it like I'm driving boats. Split, watch our footing so we never slip. In a second, there's mimosas on the mothership. Jumped up out the porch so I can understand. Nothing in the house but righteous contraband. Staying positive on negative, they probably fans. I had to make a stand and never take a stand. Bed with my brother, rather see him living. People always on that bull, Jordan, Scottie Pippen. Learn to not complain, this the life I'm giving. Yahuwah, that's the name, power made a difference. I'm a love shooter for they try to drop the gun. They know I be who I hit a target on the run. Aiming for the gold, never settle for the brush. I be with that King J, way before LeBron. I'm a love shooter for they try to drop the gun. They know I be who I hit a target on the run. Aiming for the gold, never settle for the bronze. I be with the King J, way before LeBron. Jump about the point so I can understand. Nothing in the house but righteous contraband. Staying positive on negative, they probably fans. I had to make a stand and never take a stand.
We started in the book of Acts, you said, right?
Shalom, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. I'm Minister Danya'ahla. I'm with my brother.
Teacher Yehoram.
Welcome to another episode of Sincere Milk Mondays. And as always, thank y'all for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. To all our viewers that's watching us, please do us a favor, like and subscribe to our channel so you can catch our classes, catch these lessons, catch these, Bible study, right? Bible study. You want to take these notes so that you can go over them and get a good understanding of what's going on in the Bible, okay? So, last week, we learned about our history, right? Last week we learned about our history in the Bible, right? And we dealt with the bloodline, our bloodline from Adam all the way to the 12 tribes of Israel, all right? All the way to the 12 tribes of Israel. So, now we're going to we're getting into the Israelites, our people, our forefathers going into Egypt, all right? We're getting into that direction. We're going in that direction right now. So, what I want to really deal with is our forefather Joseph, because Joseph is very important. That's a very important history that we must understand, because that's a key into how we ended up into Egypt and how we ended up being slaves in Egypt, right? Matter of fact, go to Acts chapter 7 and verse 6. Acts chapter 7 and verse 6. Because the Lord already told our forefather Abraham that we would be slaves in Egypt. The Lord already told Abraham this, right? Read that for me, brother. Acts chapter 7 and verse 6.
This is Acts chapter 7 and verse 6. And God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage, and entreat them evil 400 years.
Mm. So it says that his seed, who's his seed, is talking about us, the children of Israel, sojourn in a strange land, and they should bring them into them into bondage. All right. So showing you that the Lord told Abraham that we were going to be slaves in Egypt. All right. Read verse 7. Read on verse 7 and 9.
Verse 7. And the nations to whom they shall be in bondage will I judge, said God. And after that shall they come forth and serve me in this place. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision.
Mm-hmm.
And so Abraham begot Isaac,
Right.
and circumcised him the 8th day. And Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot the 12 patriarchs.
Right. The 12 patriarchs who are our forefathers, the 12 tribes of Israel.
And the patriarchs moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt.
What did our brothers do?
Sold Joseph into Egypt.
Uh-huh.
But God was with him.
But God was with him. So let's deal with the story of Joseph. Let's deal with the story of Joseph, which leads us into Egypt. All right? The story leads us into Egypt. And the scripture says, our brothers were wicked and sold Joseph to Egypt.
Right.
Sold him in slavery, right? How wicked is that? Your own brother doing that to you? So, from there, give me Genesis chapter 37, and we're going to read 3 to 5, all right? So, we're going to get into that story of Joseph being betrayed by his brothers, right? And this is This is hatred. This is truly hatred. Genesis chapter 37 and verse 3.
All right, this is Genesis chapter 37 and verse 3. Now Israel loved Jacob. Salakia. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors.
So it says Israel, our forefather Israel, he loved Joseph more than all the other children. So Joseph was his favorite child. Read.
And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him.
They hated him for that. His own brothers. Imagine your own brother hating you, man. Because they was like, oh, you the favorite child. You the favorite child. So they hated their brother Joseph because he was the favorite child. But that's not the only reason why they hated him. Read on.
And could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him yet the more.
And they hated him yet even more because Joseph had a gift of interpreting dreams. So his brother hated him even more. Hatred, right? Which is wicked, because the scriptures tells us that we're not supposed to hate our brother. We're not supposed to hold any grudges with our brother. Let's get that. Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 17 and 18. Let's just add that in there. We have to get that. We're not supposed to show hatred to our brothers and sisters. Y'all got that? We're not supposed to show hatred to your brothers and sisters. It's wicked, and it could lead to a whole lot of problems in the future. All right?
Right.
Read what you got.
This is Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him.
Right. We're supposed to rebuke, we're supposed to correct our brothers. That's how you show love to them. Read on.
Thou shalt not avenge,
Right.
nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people.
You're not supposed to show hatred. You're not supposed to have a grudge against your brother. You're not supposed to avenge. You're not supposed, you know what I'm saying? You're not supposed to be doing these things. Right? That's wicked. That's hatred. So go back to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. So they hated Joseph because not only was he was Israel's favorite son, but he was able to interpret dreams. So what happened? His brothers came up with a wicked plan to get rid of Joseph. Right? Jump down to read Genesis chapter 37 and verse 19. We're going to read 19 through 28.
This is Genesis chapter 37 and verse 19. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh.
Right, so they mocking him right now. This dreamer cometh, right? Making fun of him. Read.
Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, some evil beast have devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams.
So they coming up with a plot. They trying to, right? Hating on him. They coming up with a wicked plan to get rid of Joseph, his brother. All right, read on. Their brother. Read on.
And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands.
So Reuben, right, our forefather Reuben, who was Joseph's brother, heard of the plan and he stopped it. Right? He stopped that plan. Read on.
And said, let us not kill him.
Right? He didn't want his brother to get killed. Could you imagine plotting to kill your brother? How wicked is that? How wicked is that? And we have people to this very day that behave like that. Show hatred like that. We do that to each other now, today. Isn't that a curse? Deuteronomy 28 and 54?
Right.
We had that evil eye towards each other. That's hatred, man. Mm-hmm. Right? Read on.
Con. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood. Cast him into this pit that it is in the wilderness, and lay no hands upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again.
Right, so they coming up with a plan. Instead of killing him, they're coming up with another plan to get rid of him, right? His brother don't want him to get killed, but they're still going to come up with a wicked plan to get rid of him. Read on.
And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brothers, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat, of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it.
Right, so they cast Joseph into the pit. Read.
And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Galilee, with their camels bearing spiceries and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt.
So here comes some Ishmaelites now, traveling, and they're on their way heading to Egypt. Right? Read.
And Judah said unto his brother, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites.
So they was like, listen, let's sell him, our brother Joseph, to the Ishmaelite. The same Ishmaelite that's traveling to Egypt, let's sell our brother to him. Read.
Right. And let us not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brother were content.
Right, so they were content with that plan because they was like, you know what, that's our brother, so we're not going to kill him, but we're going to sell his behind into slavery, right? Read.
Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph to Egypt.
And they brought Joseph to Egypt. So they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelite, right? So we understand this, what we read in Acts, that it says, but God was with Joseph. Even though Joseph is going through all these afflictions, the Lord is still dealing with him. The Lord is still with him, right? Go to Acts chapter 7 and verse 10. Acts chapter 7 and verse 10. The Lord is still with Joseph, even though he's going through all those afflictions, right? Read.
This is Acts chapter 7 and verse 10. And deliver him out of all his afflictions.
So it says, and the Lord delivered him out of all his afflictions,
and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And he made him governor over Egypt and all his house.
Right, so we're going to get into that history, right? It says the Lord was with Joseph, and he showed favor to him, right? So let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 39 and verse 1. Because what are the afflictions that Joseph is going through, right? We understand that his brothers, right? His brothers done set him up.
Right.
His brothers done set him up, sold him to the Ishmaelite who was heading to Egypt, who was on his way to Egypt, and they lied to their father. Now they went back to Israel and lied and told him what? They lied and told his father that Joseph got eaten up by an animal.
Right.
So could you imagine you going to, tell your father how he feels? And that's his favorite son? Tell him that he got eaten up by an animal, right? What else? What else happened to Joseph? Read Genesis chapter 39 and verse 1. Because Joseph was going through it, man. Joseph was going through a lot of afflictions. Read that, brother.
This is Genesis chapter 39 and verse 1. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites.
So Joseph was brought down to Egypt, right? Remember, the Ishmaelite bought Joseph, right? His brothers sold Joseph to the Ishmaelite. Now the Ishmaelite heads to Egypt, and this officer, right? That's with Pharaoh, bought Joseph from the Ishmaelites, right? Read on, verse 2. Oh, you can read that.
Yeah, which had brought him down thither.
Right, read on.
And the Lord was with Joseph.
But the Lord was still with Joseph.
And he was a prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptians. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand.
You see that? Read.
And Joseph found grace in his sight. And he served him, and he made him overseer over his house. And all that he had, he put into his hand.
Right, so this officer, right, or this guard, the captain says captain of the guard, this Egyptian, seeing that Joseph had the Lord shows Joseph, is with Joseph. The Lord is with Joseph. Mm-hmm. And this Egyptian sees that, right? So what does he do? He puts Joseph in charge of the house. He makes him overseer of his house. Read on.
And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian house.
Mm-hmm.
For Joseph's sake.
Right.
And the blessings of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he knew not all he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored.
So Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. Why? Because the Lord was with him. The Lord was with Joseph. Even though he was sold into slavery, the Lord still was with him. And what? The Lord set him up where he was able to be in charge of this Egyptian house. Right? So from there, let's go down. Let's jump down to, well, we're going to continue to verse 7. Because what happened now? What happened? Now, the name of the Egyptian, this Egyptian leader, his name is Potiphar, right? Now his wife is trying to set up Joseph. This is another affliction that's happening now. His wife is trying to set up Joseph by saying that, by lying to them, saying Joseph is trying to mess with her, sleep with her, or whatever the case may be. When, in other words, she really wanted to sleep with Joseph. She saw Joseph, she liked him, and she wanted to mess with him. Let's get into that history, right? Genesis, read verse 7.
It's Genesis chapter 39 and verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph.
Right, she cast her eyes upon him. She liked what she saw. Now, listen, and this is his master's wife, right? Imagine what's going on in Joseph's head. Right? Read on.
And she said, lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master wife, behold, my master wotted. That's wotted, right?
Yeah.
Not what is with him, Salakim, wotted, not what is with me in the house. And he had committed all that he had to my hand. Right. There is none greater in this house than I, neither had he kept back anything from me but thee.
So what he's saying, he's telling this woman, he's telling Potiphar's wife, right, that, yo, he gave me everything except for you. He practically damn near gave me everything in the house,
right,
except for you. Read on. Because why? Read.
Because thou art his wife.
Read on.
How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
Because Joseph knew that he couldn't do that. That's a sin. Committing adultery. Let's get the laws on that. That's a sin. Right? Sleeping with another man's wife is a sin. So when Joseph seen that Potiphar's wife was trying to get with him, he was like, nah, I'm not trying to sin against the Lord. Right? Let's get the law in that. Let's get Exodus chapter 20 and verse 14. We're going to come back to this, but let's get the law on not sleeping with another man's wife, not committing adultery. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 14.
This is Exodus chapter 20 and verse 14. Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Thou shalt not what?
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Thou shalt not commit adultery. That's a law. Jump down to verse 17.
Verse 17. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
You're not supposed to covet your neighbor's wife. You're not supposed to desire another man's wife. That's wicked. That's sin. And Joseph knew that. And he refused her. But guess what? Guess what? Even though he refused her, affliction still had to happen to him, because now she gonna set him up. Right. How many of us had to go through that this day and age today? Right. How many brothers we know that get set up like that? A lot of our brothers is locked up in prison right now. Why? Because they were sleeping with someone that they wasn't supposed to be sleeping with, a woman, and they got in trouble for it. Either they got a rape charge, not saying that they are all false accusations, but some of them are.
Right.
Some of them are. So when we follow God's laws, we won't fall victim of those things, right? Not sleeping with another man's wife. You're not supposed to be sleeping around. You're supposed to get married and sleep with your wife.
Right.
Now, now y'all can try that in court when your wife is trying to say you raped you raped your wife. Take your chances with that. But don't just go around sleeping with random women, all right? So let's go back to Genesis chapter 39 and verse 17.
This is Genesis chapter 39 and verse 17. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us.
Okay, so fast forward. She tried multiple times to sleep with Joseph. He refused her, and one time, and in one incident, she ended up ripping a piece of his garment off, right? A piece of his clothing off, because he had to get up out of there. She tried to sleep with him. He was like, oh, I had to get low. I had to get up out of there, right? But she ripped off a piece of his garment. Read. So now she's running to her husband, right, and telling that Joseph tried to sleep with her.
Right.
Joseph tried to mess with her. How wicked is that?
Right.
Right? Read on.
The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me.
Right, so she's lying saying that Joseph came onto her to mock her. Right? Read on.
And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out.
That's wicked. Right? And fled out. Read.
And it came to pass, when his master heard the word of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, after this manner did that servant to me, that his wrath was kindled.
Ooh, yeah, he got mad, of course. Who wouldn't get mad? Your wife coming telling you, "Lo, your servant tried to sleep with her." Of course he gonna get mad. Read on.
And Joseph's master took him and put it into the prison.
And put him in prison, right.
A place where the king prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison.
And he was there in the prison. So there goes these afflictions that Joseph had to go through. But nevertheless, the Lord is still with him. The Lord is still with him. So remember, we got to remember, Joseph have a gift where he can interpret dreams, all right? And that's very important to understand. Let's go to Genesis chapter 40 and verse 1. So now Joseph is in prison. And Joseph gets locked up in prison for a few years, okay? Joseph is in prison for a few years. In Egypt, he's in prison for a few years for a crime he did not commit. Kind of like what we go through in America.
Right. It happens to our people. Who
Right?
People don't do nothing and go to jail for so many years.
Right? So he's in jail for years now, okay? So read that for me, brother.
This is Genesis chapter 40 and verse 1. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt.
Okay, so let's get an understanding of what's going on here. You have the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker. They offended the king of Egypt. Okay, they offended him. He's angry with them. He's wroth with them. Read on.
And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers.
Right, so he's angry, he's upset with them. Read.
And he put them in the ward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound.
So he put them into prison right where Joseph was bound, right? So he put them in the prison with Joseph. Read on.
And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continue a season in ward. And they dream a dream, both of them.
And they dreamed the dream, both of them.
Each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. The butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad.
Read on.
And he asked Pharaoh officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, wherefore look he so sadly today?
Right, so Joseph is asking the chief butler and the baker, why are they sad, right? what's going on. Read.
And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretation belong to God? Tell me them, I pray thee.
Right. So they're sad because they dreamed a dream and they do not understand what the dream is. So Joseph, that's his gift, says, hey, tell me the dream so that he can interpret it for them. All right. So jump down to verse 20 and verse 23, because we're going to fast forward. They told Joseph the dream, and Joseph interpreted the dream. Okay. Jump down to verse 20.
Come on, this is Genesis chapter 40 and verse 20. And it came to pass the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head.
Well, before we go there, we got to understand the dream was with the butler and the baker, right? And I believe who was supposed to get killed? Restore the chief butler and lift up the head of the chief butler and restored the chief butler. Right. So in the dream, Joseph interpreted the chief butler's dream and the chief baker's dream, right? And I believe it's the chief baker that got his head chopped off in a dream, saying that his head was going to get chopped off in the dream, right? So he told the chief butler that he's going to get restored into his position, and he told the chief baker that you were going to get put to death. Your head was going to get chopped off. These were the interpretations, right, of the dreams. So now, fast forward, it plays out. The interpretation was correct. Read what you got. Genesis chapter 40 and verse 20.
And it came to pass the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief baker, and of the chief. I think I said that wrong. He lifted up the head of the chief butler, and of the chief baker among his servants.
Right.
And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again.
Just like how he interpreted in the dream, that's what happened. The Pharaoh restored the chief butler. Read.
And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand.
Read.
And he hanged the chief baker.
But he hanged the chief baker just like how Joseph had interpreted. Read.
As Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Right. So Joseph interpreted the chief butler's dream and the chief baker's dream, and Joseph also told the chief butler, listen, don't forget about me. Tell Pharaoh that I'm the one that interpreted these dreams, right? But the chief butler didn't remember to tell Pharaoh that the interpretation of the dreams was from Joseph. So Joseph was still stuck in prison. Prison, right? But what I want you to get from here also is Pharaoh's birthday, because I want to show you that we don't celebrate our birthday. This is the first example of a birthday celebration in the Bible, and who were doing it? Pharaoh, the Egyptian, right? Celebrating his wicked birthday, and what did he do on his birthday? Chopped off the head of killed the chief baker. That was his birthday celebration, right? That's why we don't celebrate our birthdays, because it's not our custom. You can't find us celebrating our birthdays nowhere in the Bible. But you can see the heathens celebrate their birthdays, and every time you see a birthday celebration, it was wicked. It was wicked. All right, let's go to Leviticus 18 and 3. Leviticus 18 and 3.
The difference between.
Oh yeah, right. Now we could do this one.
Which one in 18?
Leviticus 18 and 3.
This is Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 3. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein he dwelt, shall he not do?
So the Lord commanded us not to do after the doings of the land of Egypt. In the land of Egypt, Pharaoh celebrated his birthday. The Lord tells us don't follow those ways. Don't do as the Egyptians do. That's why we're not supposed to be celebrating our birthdays. Right? So I wanted to bring that point out. So from there, let's go to Genesis chapter 41 and verse 15. So we still dealing with Joseph interpreting dreams, all right? We still dealing with Joseph interpreting dreams. So now we're going to deal with Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dream. Let's go to Genesis chapter 41 and verse 15.
All right, this is Genesis chapter 41 and verse 15. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it.
Right, so fast forward, Pharaoh was being plagued by these dreams, and he found out that he had a prisoner who was Joseph that could interpret dreams. Right? So now he has a dream that needs to be interpreted. So you already know he's going to go to Joseph to do that. He's going to go to Joseph to get it interpreted, right? Jump down to verse 29.
Verse 29. Behold, there comes 7 years of great plenty throughout all of Egypt.
So now this is the interpretation. This is the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream. Read that again. I'm sorry.
Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt.
Read on.
And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine.
So Joseph interpreted the dream to Pharaoh, telling him, listen, you're going to have 7 years where y'all going to be fruitful, have plenty of food, everything is going to be all good. But following that, after that, you're going to have 7 years of famine, which means y'all ain't going to have no food, no nothing, dry, right? Read on. You can read verse. Yeah, you can read it again.
And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine,
and
all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land.
And the famine shall consume the land. So this is the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream. The interpretation of Pharaoh's dream. So what happened? What happened, right? So Pharaoh, after Joseph interpreted the dream, Pharaoh sees favor in Joseph's eyes now. Right? And as a result of that, Pharaoh set up Joseph to be in command, high command in Egypt, because he was able to interpret his dream. Jump down to verse 37.
Verse 37. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants.
So Pharaoh saw that and was like, whoa, that's deep. That's good. I'm glad that you interpreted this dream so that now I can prepare for this famine.
Right.
Could you imagine 7 years of famine? What?
And you know it's coming.
And you know it's coming. So now that Joseph interpreted that dream to Pharaoh, Pharaoh was able to prepare. They were able to prepare, right? And gather twice as much. They gathered twice as much so that when the famine do come, well, it wouldn't be a famine anymore. They would have food because they prepared for it.
Right.
Thanks to Joseph, because he was able to interpret the dream. So Pharaoh liked it, and he set Joseph up on high in Egypt. All right, read on.
Verse 38. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?
Right, because the Spirit of God definitely is dealing with Joseph, man. Read.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art.
Read on.
Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
Mm-hmm.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And
So, right.
go ahead.
You can, yeah, that's it on that. So, Pharaoh set Joseph on high to rule over Egypt. All right, to rule over Egypt. So, that concludes the story of Joseph. For now, we're going to pick up and continue next week, where we're going to be dealing with more with this famine, Joseph and our brothers, Israel and our brothers in Egypt. All right,
Egypt,
we're going to
right.
continue with this story next week. All right. My name is Minister Danya'ahla, my brother.
Teacher Yehoram.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Like and subscribe to our class. Once again, all right. Shalom.
Shalom.